This is the Hiking Thru Life podcast. We've all been gifted a journey called life. Let's see where the journey leads us today.
Welcome to the Hiking Thru Life podcast. This is Sarah.
And this is Andy.
And we are super excited about this episode because it's the 1-year anniversary of the Hiking Thru Life podcast. So cheers to that.
Cheers.
We're cheering with our coffee.
Yeah, 1 year ago, today actually, June 25th, was when we released our very first episode.
This is Fire Talk Chats with Hiking Thru Life.
Getting out there and hiking, there's two main things that we've learned. You need a lot less than you think. You need yourself and just be present. Everything else is optional.
I really don't like the stereotype that, if you're a vegan, you just eat saddle leaves and nuts. You're weaker. You can't keep up with outdoors things. You can't get outdoors equipment. And this was always something that we wanted to challenge. Vegan diet, vegan gear is completely possible to do seriously hard outdoors things.
It reached up with its paw, hit me across the face. My head whipped to the side and I went flying to the side. At this point, I was pretty sure that I was about to die because it was just so much force that this bear had, and there was just nothing that I could do as this 17-year-old kid. I'm flying to the side from that swipe, and then with that same paw, it throws me to the ground hard on my tailbone, and its head's right at my leg. I felt its teeth go in both sides of my leg, and then I blacked out.
It was a little scary. A woman out on the trail, you feel a little bit vulnerable, not really sure what you're going to encounter. But I decided that I'm not going to sit home and be scared. I'm going to go out and do whatever it is I want to do and deal with whatever comes my way. I just feel I'd rather be out doing something, even if it scares me a little bit, than to stay home and sit on my couch and say, boy, I wish I had done that. Because you're always going to regret it if you don't go do it.
You can turn anything into a bigger adventure than it could be.
If anything, like an opportunity pops up, go for it. Just go for it because you never know, it might be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. If you have anything that gets in the way, go out and ask for help. Like, there's so many people out there that, friends, family, that are so supportive.
It's simple. You walk, you make camp, you get water, you eat, nature calls. Those are the things you have to do on any given day. That's it. Nothing else. It's very simple.
The other thing that about getting into hiking that has been a really fantastic benefit is it's got me thinking a lot about the impact we have as humans on our environment, and then also the history of our lands. And got a lot I'm contemplating around that. It's been a very interesting experience.
I call the property Homestead Zero. It had never been touched, literally. I spent the first day just cutting enough trees to pull the van in. My intention's to keep it completely off the grid, be completely self-sustained, and get as close to zero waste coming from the property as possible. Most of the materials that I'll use to build the homes and the buildings on it will be upcycled from the dump and local barns that get torn down, and some of the lumber off the property that I'll get milled.
It was kind of like, bringing back a good memory. So the funny part, though, was that me and my daughter, she's done this, multiple times before. She knows how this goes. And my husband kind of had his own agenda, so the two of us kind of had to explain to him, like, how this works. So we're like, well, dear, we have to do this first. This is how things work with Eloise, our daughter.
They have experienced more than some people have experienced in, their entire lives, and they get to explore more. They have a much larger appreciation for nature and the environment, just meeting new people. They become very fortunate with everybody that they meet. They're much more outgoing and they're much more level-headed. I don't think they are the kids that they are now that they could have been if we were still just doing, our routine 2 years ago.
The struggle and challenge, it's difficult right now, but the reward in the end will be worth it.
Seeing that raw power of the lake is the other reason, and it's just like, how could you not be inspired by that? And it's just crazy. Being at the lake for me is just humbling.
Yeah, and thinking back on that, the year's gone very fast. And, we just dived into the podcast. It's something we thought about for a little bit, and then we just went for it. And it's been a journey and an adventure. And we've learned a lot. We've reflected on things. We've had challenges and growing pains. But that's what starting something new and being an entrepreneur is about.
Yeah, there's a lot that has happened within the last year since starting this. We've done, I don't know how many interviews you've done, almost 50, and we've done our road trip series last summer, and that turned into recapping every day. We were just actually listening to our very first episode 1, Meet Hiking Through Life, and we were actually discussing right before we went on our road trip how we were going to be releasing updates on our road trip. And initially it was going to be bi-weekly, but instead it turned into us just recording like every night about what we did that day.
Every single day. And we don't know if those were, well, actually we do know those weren't a top listen of our podcasts. But we're happy we did it because one day we're going to listen back on those and just remember those fond memories of our summer road trip. But the cool thing is that on that road trip, that's really when the podcast started to form into what it is today. It started, we reached out to people we met along the way. Like one of the very first interviews we had with Tenderfoot Learning Lab was me just reaching out to them on Instagram, messaging them on the messaging app as we were driving, because I knew we were driving through the town that they lived in.
Yeah, we were at a brewery in that town, and you had kind of shown me the text that you were going to send them on Instagram, and I don't know, for me, it was...
You were very reluctant.
I was, just because, that's not my personality. Just to reach out to random people that I've never met before. But as, I guess, intimidating or kind of resistant I was, we went for it. And it turned out great. They responded and we're super happy to be on the podcast to talk about Tenderfoot Learning Lab.
Yeah, so it's just like diving into things like that. Just reflecting on moments such as those are the moments where we've learned and grown, and this podcast has really become what it is. Because if I wasn't reaching out to all these people and all these awesome guests that we've had, we wouldn't have anything. So we're super thankful for all the guests that we have had. This, like I said, this podcast wouldn't be anything without all the guests, and I genuinely do research on the guests and want you guys on for certain reasons. You guys are all doing really awesome, inspiring things related to the outdoors, and that's why we have you on. So keep up what you're doing, and listeners, keep encouraging us, because the fact that you're listening is keeping us encouraged too. So thank you, truly. We really appreciate your listening and your support.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely appreciate all of those that have subscribed to our podcast and all of you that do listen. So if you do want to be a guest on the podcast and share your story, because that's what this has really evolved into, is guests that we either find or come in contact with while we're out and about, and Sarah interviews them and lets them share their story. So if you want to be on the podcast, or if you know of somebody that would make a great podcast guest, you can head on over to hikingthroughlife.net/podcast, and you can fill out the form, or you can email us at hikingthroughlife@gmail.com. So speaking about how this podcast has evolved, I mean, it really has gone from something that we didn't really know initially kind of where it was going. It was just us kind of in the very beginning, just interviewing a couple friends and family members, and they're just real short little segments, and it's kind of evolved into this longer form interview or even just conversation that Sarah has with all sorts of people that have some way, shape, or form been kind of influenced by the outdoors. And whether it's influenced them in going a different direction in their life or influence them to have some sort of a career or hobby that they do in the outdoors all the time, and just being able to share that story. We're fortunate enough to be able to find guests who come on and have this be a weekly episode release.
Yeah, and for year 2, we definitely do hope that it's going to continue to be weekly. We'll see how things go. We have our own life changes coming up, as we've shared on some previous podcasts. We have a new hiker coming into our family in September, but we are going to try to keep up with the podcast.
Yeah, it sometimes is a little bit of a struggle just to keep churning them out weekly, but we enjoy it, and I think as long as we enjoy it and we still have these awesome guests come on, we're going to be encouraged to keep going through every week and releasing a new episode. And that's another thing that, as this podcast has evolved, I feel like one thing that I really have been kind of trying to master is producing a really good quality sounding podcast too. So a couple things that we've done along the way this past year is we've upgraded some of our equipment. We've purchased a microphone. We started using Zoom to do our interviews, which is pretty decent quality for just online interviews. We like Zoom because we can video interface with the guests. We don't release the video, obviously. So with something that has that video component, so we can kind of have that face-to-face interaction over the screen with our guests, is very important to us. I know there's other audio software, which would be audio only, that might make the quality a little bit better, but I've also, I feel, found my way with the editing too. It's been a little bit of a learning curve, but over the last year, I've learned a lot of skills when it comes to editing these podcasts. So I really hope that it's coming through in the podcast episodes. We were listening back to a few of our older episodes, and I can definitely tell a difference.
Yeah, definitely. You can tell the quality difference, and Andy does give a lot of time and effort into editing these podcasts, and I put a lot of time into like finding our guests and interviewing them, researching them, taking notes about them. So we do hope that it's reflecting upon all of you listeners out there, because we are super passionate about doing this, and we make a really good team together. We definitely complement each other in this podcasting world. I know if I didn't have Andy to edit all these interviews I'm doing with people, this podcast probably wouldn't exist, because I wouldn't really have the patience to sit here and edit and do all this audio tech work. That's just not my thing. So I'm super grateful to have a great husband and podcast partner to adventure through this journey with.
Well, and I'm super grateful to have an awesome wife that does all of the interviews, because that is not my strong suit. Sarah, we definitely complement each other, like you said, and I think that this podcast definitely wouldn't exist. It would just be me rambling on if it was me alone, and I don't know if I could continue to do that. I'm not quite the rambler when it comes to...
It would be rambling. You are good at rambling. That's why doing these just these talks with the two of us is sometimes interesting. You guys might see a different side of Andy that you don't hear often. He does like to ramble.
Yeah, depends on what I'm talking about, but I'm definitely not as social, I guess, as you. So I wouldn't be out there finding guests and having the awesome conversations that you have week in and week out.
Yeah, and a lot of the conversations might be monotone, because sometimes Andy forgets to use enthusiasm. And yeah, if I was editing the podcast, like I said, it would sound like crap. There would be a lot of tech issues, and we probably wouldn't have as many listeners as we do. So cheers to having awesome marriage and awesome podcasting partners. And we're excited for year 2.
Yeah. And that's kind of how all of this Hiking Thru Life stuff started out, and just our relationship too, is the complementing, our difference complemented each other. So I think that that's a kind of a great little quality that we have going on as a couple and as this podcast partnership. And as we hike through life, there's going to be a lot of things that we will rely on each other for. For example, Sarah, you rely on me for my attention to detail. You rely on me for my spreadsheets. I know you hate the spreadsheets, but I rely on you for your enthusiasm, for your spontaneousness, spontaneity.
Yeah, and that's very true. Over Mother's Day and Father's Day, we wrote letters to each other about why we're going to be great parents. And yeah, one of the things I wrote to Andy was that you have this extreme attention to detail, and sometimes it drives me crazy because it is so detail oriented and a little too much for me sometimes. But I need a person like that because I don't do that.
Yeah, so as we're sitting here talking about all that, that reminds me I have to finish up our taxes. Speaking of spreadsheets. So, anyways, we've had some other awesome just growth throughout the past year. I know it was a struggle during our road trip, kind of releasing all of those daily episodes, because I did want to kind of continue on and not skip a day and all of that. So I know there were some struggles that we had to overcome as just kind of a couple, and we had our own differences because you just wanted to go with the flow and do it whenever, and I had this kind of more rigid kind of schedule of them.
Very rigid schedule about it, and it just became this like task we had to do every day. It just felt like something we had to do every day, and sometimes it wasn't even that exciting to do. It was just like going through the motions because we started doing it, and Andy was like, we have to stick to it.
So I think that's something that, yeah, maybe was a little much, to kind of keep on that schedule and not just kind of enjoy the moment sometimes. But I think, like you had mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, is we will look back at that someday and listen back to it and probably be glad that we did document that.
Yeah, there's for sure things that we said that is definitely out of my mind by now.
Yeah, and if you don't want to miss an episode, we are doing a monthly newsletter now. So if you go to hikingthrulife.net, on the main page there, you can join our email list. And our email monthly newsletter will contain all of the previous month's podcast episodes and links to those episodes. So if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, you can sign up for our email lists and not miss an episode that way as well. We also, in that, will include whatever blog posts that we had that previous month as well. So we're shooting for a monthly release of a blog. That too is just, it's not our strong suit, writing. Neither of us really enjoy the process that much. So we do want to continue to do blogs just because we have awesome kind of stories to share, and we love documenting our travels and stuff, and we hope that they do inspire people to get out and either explore new places or just get out in general. So you can sign up for the newsletter to just stay informed of that, and we also have a neat short little life hack included in all of those.
And a book of the month, and sometimes the book of the month features a book written by an author that we've interviewed. And if you subscribe to our newsletter by the end of this month, the end of June, you will automatically be entered for our June giveaway.
Yeah, you don't want to miss this giveaway. It's awesome. It's the Ultimate Superior Hiking Trail Resource Package. So it includes a guidebook, which their latest guidebook is the 8th edition. It includes their brand new data book, and that's lightweight. It's pocket size, so you can carry it on the trail with you. It includes a set of pocket maps. So if you don't necessarily want to carry the guidebook, or you just want to carry maps in general, definitely get those. I used those on my Superior Hiking Trail through hike this past fall. So the last item in that package, though, is the Hiking Thru Life Nalgene water bottle. So it's a pretty awesome package. And if you plan to head up to the Superior Hiking Trail, or if you're just interested in maybe exploring a new trail or the same trail that you've been hiking forever, like me, I've been using that trail for quite a while. Definitely either go sign up for our email list. That's one way to enter, or share this podcast on social media with the hashtag Hiking Thru Life, and you'll also be entered. So there's 2 ways to enter, and you can go to hikingthrulife.net/giveaway for all of the contest rules and details.
And with that, we're going to wish you all an awesome, adventurous summer, and keep on listening to year 2 of our podcast. And again, thank you for all the support that you've given us the past year.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we are excited for the 2nd year of podcasting.
Peace, love, and hike through life.
We love sharing these stories with you through the Hiking Thru Life podcast, and we're so grateful that you listen to this podcast. If you'd like to support the Hiking Thru Life podcast further, we have these amazing new t-shirts and water bottles. The t-shirts come in 4 colors, and the water bottles are perfect for trails, adventuring, or daily use. Consider checking them out at hikingthrulife.net/shop.
Use the code PODCAST and receive 10% off your first order.
You've been listening to the Hiking Thru Life podcast. Peace, love, and hike through life.